I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom podcast. This is the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today, I am joined by Mr. Doug Ell. He is going to be talking to us today. He is an author, a former atheist who says that he's spent more than 30 years reconciling science and God because he needed scientific evidence to believe in God. So he's going to tell us a little bit about just his background, a little bit about his backstory, and just learn some more about his insights about faith and religion. So thank you so much for joining us, Doug.
Well, thanks for having me, Noah. Delighted to be here.
So if you could just tell me a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, I'll give you the short version since we only have an hour. No. Um, well, I grew up a Christian in this small town in Connecticut, but when I got to high school, I'm a very nerdy person. Was really nerdy in high school. I mean, I always thought if you looked up the word nerd in the dictionary, they should have had my picture. I mean, I was just the perfect. Love science, love math. When I got to high school, I read that. Life could have started in a dirty pond. And there's a movie, Fantasia. It's an old Disney movie, but where they have a scene like that. They play to Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. They have this scene where lightning hits a pond and suddenly you get life. Okay. So I thought, well, if it's in a book, it must be in high school book, it must be true. And it turned me away from God. I thought if God didn't create life, if the Bible's wrong on that, then why should I believe anything else in it? And I've considered myself an atheist. I thought religion was dumb for stupid people, all the way through finishing high school on to MIT, where I double majored in math and physics, and 3 years of graduate school in theoretical math. Then I got a law degree. But now I'm in my early 30s and I have a son. My wife says, let's get the kid baptized. And I'm an atheist. Okay. So I quickly said, yes, dear. I don't know if you're married, no, but who needs that kind of fight? You want to sprinkle a little holy water on the kid, knock yourself out. So we went to church and I realized that those people had just a joy, a serenity, a peace that was wonderful. And I wanted what they had. And I was doing good as a lawyer, doing good financially, professionally. But I realized it was all kind of shallow, all that chasing after money and success. I wanted what these people had. But being an MIT guy, I told myself, Doug, you can't believe in this stuff unless you can find scientific evidence. And no, that's what started me on my journey. And what I have found is just so amazing in so many areas. And that's what I'm here to share with you. It's why I write my books.
So, how has the science facts, destroyed atheism?
In so many ways. But I'm going to start. I think anybody who confronts an atheist or starts telling you that religion is contrary to God, I got one easy question for you to ask them, and that is, let's go back to my example. Let's go back to how did life get started? Okay, now there's the answer is nobody can even think without God. Nobody can think of a plausible way to get started. Um, the the mathematics of it, when you start to look at how complex life is, it's just incredible. So let me just so the question is, how did life get started? The number one to me scientific fact that destroys atheism and has for years, although our blind culture won't admit it, is that we now know that life is made from advanced digital code. Okay, now let me break that down. Code is just uh, digital code is just code that comes in discrete units. So every kind of writing is digital code. It's got special symbols, spaces, letters. It comes in units. That's digital code. You and I are talking to each other right now over through this miraculous digital code that translates everything into little bits, sends it at the speed of light, and we are having a conversation even though we are hundreds of miles apart. So digital code is an advanced technology that human beings first used in writing, and now in our digital age, it's just amazing. What we have found is that all life runs on digital code. It's called DNA. You've heard, the expression, it's in your DNA, it's in your genes. Genes are just a section of DNA that prints out a part that we need called a protein. So you have advanced, and there's four groups of atoms, and specially designed, and life arranges them in incredible ways to run human beings in every form of life. We know that. We've known that since 1953. Now, in 2011, right before I wrote my first book, which came out in 2014, Counting to God, there was a study called the ENCODE Project. And their job was to figure out what's in human DNA. Now, no, we're not talking about some minor backroom project. We're talking about 400 of the world's top scientists worldwide at the most prestigious universities, et cetera, all tasked to figure out what's in human DNA. And in 2011, they released 30 major papers worldwide. I'm going to give you few highlights. Number one, they said that the code, which for human beings, it's 3.2 billion with a B letters of DNA code in almost every one of our maybe 30 trillion cells. So if you imagine 1,000 thick books, really thick books, one on top of each other, that's about how much code it takes to build a human being and to run it. Okay, so they found out, first of all, and this astonished them and was completely caught the atheist community by surprise, was that the code's basically fully functional. We don't understand what it does, but it doesn't have these big jump sections like atheists used to want to tell us. Okay. So you have fully functional code, 3.2 billion letters. And again, this is not just me saying it, it's 400 top scientists worldwide. Second, they published this, and this is truly, amazing. They found out that the code has at least 2 layers of information in it. To break that down again, there's code within code. It is incredibly sophisticated code. Bill Gates, Microsoft guy, he knows something about code, maybe. I mean, the famous quote is that DNA is like computer code, only far, far more advanced than anything human beings have ever built. So you have code that's functional, You have it's very advanced. What does it do? It does everything as far as we can tell so far. It we have, and this made the front page of the New York Times in 2011. We have 4 million switches in our body to turn our systems on and off. Things like, oh, we need extra parts over here, uh, and we have 3D printers in our body. They're called ribosomes. Okay, 3D printers are a marvel of the digital age. You send code to a machine and it prints something out. Well, we have them in our body. All life has them. Uh, it's there's so much. So the code builds us, builds the pieces, tells us how our bodies how to put the pieces together, tells our body how to run the system, when to turn things on and off. Again, 4 million switches. And the mathematics of any of this starting by chance are ridiculous. I mean, keep in mind, to have life, you just don't start with a code. You got to also have machines that read that exact code. You got to have machines that can copy that code. Okay. And then you got to have the 3D printers. You got to have the code in the right order so that the machines can build new copies of themselves. It's beyond belief mathematically. In 1964, a Yale mathematician calculated that the odds of life starting by chance, that going back to that silly thing in the Disney movie of lightning hitting that pond, it's like one in a number with 100 billion zeros. Not one in 100 billion, one in a number with 100 billion zeros. The it's just there have been all sorts of studies, and atheists keep thinking they can solve the origin of life, and the more they look at it, the more complex they are, and the more frustrated by it. It is life itself is fundamental evidence that we are designed.
Do you have an opinion of is science and religion still a conflict today, or has it become more um less conflicted?
I think, in my mind, there's absolutely no conflict, and science has proven that life was created and designed, and it's also proven that the universe was created and designed. But to your question, the truth is a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think, I've heard people say, oh, I believe in science, like there's some contradiction. Science isn't a religion. Science is just figuring things out.
Mhm.
And if you want to go into the roots of it, modern science came about because of Christianity, because it's all of the great original thinkers. I mean, Newton, Kepler, Copernicus, it was all to figure out how God did it. That's why we have modern science coming up in Europe and not in China or India. I mean, there's a lot of brilliant people there, but this idea that we can figure out how God did it. That was the spark for modern science. But now, yeah, people get confused. There's so much misinformation out there. So a lot of people think there is a conflict. I say no conflict at all.
Does Darwin's theory play a role today?
It to me, it's a zombie theory. Okay, no, it's dead. It's been dead for a while, but and all the top biologists know it doesn't work. How do you get all this working code, which in mathematical terms, information, by chance? Let's go back to my example of this pile of books. Okay, thick books, 2 columns of dense text on every page, thin pages, 1,000 of them piled one on top of another. Okay, that's the DNA code for I have, slightly different, but mostly exactly the same DNA code. All right. Every generation, there's, and I've discussed this with Harvard scientists, we've agreed that it's about 100 errors in the code every human generation. So they're sprinkled somewhere in these 1,000 books. In other words, there's 100 typos. Okay. Now, once in a while, a typo, a genetic mutation, is so bad that the organism dies. But that's rare. Usually it's just kind of hidden because we have incredible code that with overlapping redundancy. But the point is, Darwin's theory says that the things can you can get the books better by adding typos. I am not making that up. Okay. That these random changes over time are going to produce new technology. And that is so absurd today. And again, all the top scientists know that Darwin's theory doesn't work. I mean, the Royal Society of England, one of the most prestigious scientific bodies in the world, had a conference a few years ago, to see, well, can anybody tell us how we can save Darwinism? And they wouldn't there were people there who knew the answer that God designed life, but they wouldn't let them speak, of course. And so you had all these speeches about how we can save Darwin's atheism, and how we can get there without God. It all failed. Darwin tried to replace God, saying nature can design anything, can design stuff, but nature can't design anything. Nature can't get the code in the right order. I think that's obvious. I think it's clear that Darwin's theory is now nonsense. But again, a lot of people haven't gotten the word.
How do we know how human beings were designed?
It's There's so many ways. I think. Let's start off with go back to genes. So genes again are sections of that DNA code, sections of the code that are sent to these 3D printers and prints out a protein part. That's a gene. We have in our heads, in these 54 sections of code that don't look like the code in any other kind of animal. These are complex sequences of code. We have parts in our brains that are not in any other kind of animal. Now, the odds of getting one of these parts by chance, much less all of them, but just one of them, is much less than you picking the right grain of sand out of a pile of sand that goes out to the nearest star. Okay, that's a number with like 60 or 70 zeros. That's just to get one of them. We have 54 of them. There is no way to get there without design. And it's true of all life. All life has these special genes. Scientists, the literature calls them orphan genes. I call them in my book designer genes because they're designed sections of code, obviously, and they show that every kind of animal was designed, not just human beings.
Do you have an idea of how God was created?
Another good question. Who created God is the question. So let's look at that from a scientific standpoint. It is clear now that our universe was created. I won't get into the technical parts of that, but I think everybody realizes that. We've known that for about 100 years. So the question is, who created God? It comes up a lot, and I love that question. Now, when the universe was created, it's a little hard to imagine because it wasn't just matter popped into existing time and space. Time and space also were created. Okay. So, and that's mind boggling because you think of everything, you look out, you see space, you figure, well, matter just popped into it. No, time and space also were created. Time, space, and matter are totally linked. That's Einstein's theory of relativity. Okay. So, something outside of space and time created our universe. We could get into, if you want, why the universe is designed, but let's stick with creation, stick with your question. Now, that means that the creator, God, is not in our space and time. What I like to think of things is that, like, we live in a fishbowl of a universe. It's a pretty darn big fishbowl. Okay, don't get me wrong, it's pretty amazing. But it's a fishbowl of matter, energy, space, and time. We cannot see what's outside the fishbowl. And when you say what caused something, that relates to something that in time that came before something later, that there's a connection. First thing A happens and it causes thing B. And we say A caused B. All right. God is outside of time. God just is. And that's pretty strange, but there has to be something you start with that just is. God is existence. Are you familiar with in the Bible when is on Mount Sinai and he sees the burning bush, which is God,
Yes.
and God says, go tell Pharaoh, I want my people out of here, let them go. And Moses says, okay, well, right, who shall I say sent me? What's your name, God? And God says, I am who I am. And this phrase in the Bible, I am, means God. And I translate it today as existence. God is saying his name is existence. Our universe exists because of God. We exist because of God. God is the uncaused entity outside of our fishbowl of time and space. We don't know anything other than God is.
In textbooks, I've never heard about the pawn thing because usually what most textbooks do is when you're talking about creation of our planet, it's the Big Bang. That's usually what the
Right.
big thing is. So, are there other ways that scientists think? Because I never had actually heard of the pawn before. The pawn method was actually kind of new to me. So, are there other methods that some scientists have come up with of how they think our planet was created?
Well, there's many theories. You're talking just the planet Earth now? No, or are you talking about the universe, just the planet Earth?
Yes, planet Earth.
So the popular model of the Big Bang theory, by the way, the Big Bang requires something outside space and time to start it. So, you still have the question, who lit the torch? Um, the Big Bang theory says that something outside our universe, and they don't want to call it God, started our universe, and then there was billions of years of matter forming stars, stars forming galaxies, and we have our some of the matter condensing into planets, and that's sort of the accepted theory of cosmology today. Um, have you heard of the James Webb Space Telescope?
Um, that name does sound familiar. So I probably have learned it at some point.
It's a fantastic new telescope out in space that can see further than the Hubble Space Telescope. Okay, and it's perceives it's shifted towards the red so it can see further because those far galaxies are receding far away. So under the Big Bang theory, the secular Big Bang theory, without God, when we look back at these galaxies, we're looking back in time, billions of years toward the creation of the universe. Okay. And all the models say that because you can see, according to their models, they're looking at galaxies that they say, according to their deep time theories, are very close to the Big Bang. and they expect to see shapeless blobs. There have been two major studies that say that's wrong. Those galaxies are just as fully formed as the galaxies around us. Now, the Bible says 11 times God made the heavens and stretched them out. So he made the earth. You know, one of the chapters, Noah, in my first book, Counting to God, that I found particularly fun was I wrote about all the special qualities of our planet Earth. You know, you read the literature these days, and there's talk of exoplanets. Sure, there are blobs floating around other stars, but people don't realize how special Earth is. And when you start looking at all the special qualities of Earth, you realize that there may not be another planet as special in the entire universe. Just to name a few that I can remember. For example, we have a moon that's the largest moon compared to its planet of any moon in the solar system by far. The moon keeps the Earth stable, it gives us tides. Uh, it's very important to life on Earth. The there's no good theory without God of where the moon came from. It's and there's reasons for that. The that we're in the right place from the sun so that water can be a liquid. We're not too close so it burns up, or too far away where it's ice. We have a magnetic field that protects us from dangerous radioactivity. We have just the right atmosphere with enough oxygen. You can go on this stuff. When you add together all the different parts of Earth, I think it's clear that Earth was designed too. And I know that's really contrary to what you're going to read in a lot of places, but there's a number of scientists have dug into this and come up with some incredible findings on our special planet.
So, what made you decide to reject atheism for faith?
You know, if you're really going to call yourself a true scientist or a believer in science, then you have to be willing to follow the evidence. Richard Feynman, a famous physicist, once said, if it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. He said in that simple sentence is the definition of science. So if you're going to, people say they believe science, they don't want to look at all this evidence I'm telling you about us being in complex code. It's it's all overwhelming. And I decided when I looked at the evidence, what particularly got me, was my background in mathematics, and I realized you can't get the code in the right order by chance. Just try to think about that. We're built on complex code. You can't get complex code by chance, right? You've probably got a cell phone, right? Almost everybody today's got a cell phone. So you want to get your cell phone to do something new. What do? Well, it's easy. You go to the app store or whatever, and you download an app, right? Now your cell
Mm-hmm.
phone will do something new. What's an app? An app is just new code. Now, so there's thousands and thousands of apps. Do you think any of them come from code that was just randomly put together? Of course not. That would never work. Everybody knows that. Every one of those apps on your phone was designed by a mind, probably several minds, maybe many brilliant minds, to come up with the coding on that app that works on your phone. Life is like that. To get an organism to do something new, you have to add new coding, new apps, and it's you can't get working code by chance. That's a simple mathematical fact. When I realized that, I knew atheism was wrong.
So, can you get technology by accident?
No, nobody's ever gotten technology by accident. I mean, you can make discoveries by accident. Maybe something, you notice something. It wasn't penicillin discovered by somebody noticing mold on something. Maybe I have that wrong, but you can't build anything, any kind of technology by accident. Let's go back to your phone. I mean, do you think you could come up with new apps by randomly scrambling code? I don't think so. The odds you'd never get it done in a trillion lifetimes. You wouldn't come close to anything that worked. The odds are too crazy.
So for someone that might be atheist but is starting to have doubts that there may be a God, what advice would you have for them wanting to maybe find their religion and find their faith again? And what advice would you have for them?
That's a great question, though. One of the problems with atheism sucks the joy out of life because atheism says life is meaningless. Faith tells you that you belong here and that we have a purpose, and it puts meaning and joy in your life, in my view. If you're on the atheist faith fence, and I was there, so I think I can talk about it a little bit. You have to first be open to the evidence. I think you have to ask. To me, faith is a gift. We are born with hardened minds. Okay, we like to think the universe is all about people and people can do everything. Uh, you have to ask God for faith. And then there's so many great books you could read. Um, Thomas Keller passed away recently. He wrote wonderful books on Christianity. Uh, just talk to a friend who goes to church. Maybe go to church. Uh, the Bible tells us we're supposed to pray and go to church. I think a lot of people don't want to be a God. They don't want to do those things. But I think people will find if they actually do that, it will change their life.
For people that want to kind of follow you and learn more about your story, and maybe you could help if they have questions, further questions that they want to ask you, where all is the best place that they can find you at?
Sure. Uh, so my first book was called Counting to God, all one word, obviously. And my website is countingtogod, all one word.com. There you can read about the books I've published. I did my most recent book came out last year. It's a graphic novel. A graphic novel, for those of anybody listening who's not familiar with that term, it's not a novel about sex. It's kind of like a big comic book, and and it kind of breaks down things for a younger audience. But so I've got that book on my website. I do a blog with some fantastic stuff, like I told you about with the James Webb Space Telescope and other discoveries that confirm the truth of the Bible, some archaeological discoveries. Um, and you can contact me off the website, anybody wants to. And you can also uh, you can see when I launched my first book, I gave a talk at MIT. I think there's a link to it from my website, or you can just put Doug Ell MIT into YouTube, and my video will pop up.
As I'll always do, I'll put all of his links in the description below his website, some links to his books, as well as his social media platforms down there for you to have all in one spot. For me, if you want to keep tabs on the podcast and just be updated about anything that's going on, I'm Instagram and TikTok. Mine's Lethal Venom Podcast. And Facebook and YouTube, it's Noah's Podcast. And always, you can listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Pandora, as well as some other platforms. It's everywhere, but I wanted to give a huge thank you to Doug for sharing some insights about this with me. Um, you know, religion's always it's such a touchy subject. It's
Yeah,
like it's like what it is with politics. Religion's just another one of those subjects where it's really taboo and people if they don't like to hear what your answer is, then they'll go on to a huge tirade of trying to say, okay, well, this is what I believe in. This is what you need to also believe in as well. So I appreciate you for sharing some of your insights with me. Hopefully, some people have learned some stuff today, but just a huge appreciation and thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. No, I really enjoyed our talk.
So, as thankful to Doug for joining me today. As always, check him out on social media and his website. Catch you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.